Hey movie junkies, welcome back to Twin Flicks. We're always here celebrating the magic of movies and most importantly, physical media with you. Now this video is a special video to me personally. Ever since it was announced mid last year, I believe it was, I've been highly anticipating this release. And as you can tell from the title, I'm talking about MVD's 4K presentation of Swamp Thing. First of all, guys, whoever says, or if you know anybody who says, physical media is dead, get over it, streaming is the future, stop buying physical media, it doesn't make any sense. We have Swamp Thing on 4K UHD. This proves that physical media is not dead, it's still breathing, it's here, it's alive, and it's well. And it's all thanks to these boutique labels like MVD, like Shout Factory, Arrow Video, Criterion, Vinegar Syndrome, Second Sight. All these boutique studios is what's keeping physical media alive. Because honestly, in the next 5 years, I'm going to say, studios, they're not going to do physical media anymore. They're already doing it in Australia. Disney is getting rid of all physical media in Australia. It's going to come for us sooner or later, and it's these boutique studios like MVD that is keeping physical media alive. Now, there is something a little extra special with this 4K release that I'm going to get into right now. When Swamp Thing was announced, MVD advertised the 4K that it was scanned in 16-bit color depth. And honestly, I've had quite a few different people DMing me on social media asking, what does that mean? And also I've had some say, well, isn't every 4K in 16-bit? Well, they should be, but they're not. The typical UHD release is in 10 or 12 color depth. Majority are in 10. The higher the number of bit means more colors and shades of colors are presented, allowing for a much more faithful and precise color reproduction. Or to put it another way, a film scanned at 16-bit, essentially we are getting 65,536 color tones, in which it gives about 28 billion different color shades, creating significantly better depth and range of colors. And Swamp Thing, having all the different shades of greens, makes it a great fit for this. And I'm going to get more into that in my comparison review. Now, Shout Factory released Swamp Thing back in 2013 with a 2K scan. And, I mean, yeah, it was a decent transfer at the time. It definitely had its fair share of problems. Now, just a side note, in my interview with Head of Acquisitions for MVD, Eric Wilkinson, he went in and talked a little bit about his goal in bringing Swamp Thing back to life under the new MVD LaserVision label, with his next entry in the LaserVision collection with the 1980s horror classic Ghoulies that I believe comes out in October. Now, Swamp Thing does come at us with a new 4K restoration from the original 35mm negative, forming a new native 4K DI with HDR10 and Dolby Vision grading, all scanned in 16-bit color depth. Eric also decided to include both the domestic PG rated cut and the international unrated cut, and both cuts have identical 4K transfers, so there's no difference there. Alright, so let's dive in and take a closer look between the 4K and Shout Factory's previous Blu-ray. You can immediately see this 4K presentation is very impressive and a huge upgrade when compared to the previous Blu-ray. The improvements are just obvious, as you can see here, on every level. The entire image looks brighter, much cleaner, fresher, and more lifelike. And also dirt, debris, and some anomalies with age-related wear and tear that was clearly visible in the Shout Factory Blu-ray has all been cleaned up here on the 4K, while still remaining faithful to the original source material and maintaining that great indie film look that we love. The 16-bit color depth really works its magic with the image that exhibits fuller life with truer, deeper, richer colors. The highlight here being all the different shades of greens in the film, from the neon green ooze at the beginning of the film that glows vibrantly. Also the light and darker greens of trees, plants, the swamp, the bog. And we have those cherry candy reds and crimson reds that look much stronger and healthier, deeper and richer. But a nice reference point to this color palette is when Alec is on fire. Now we have a very rich, vibrant orange-yellow fire that looks incredibly stronger and more lifelike, especially when compared to the Blu-ray where the fire looks really blown out. Also, with this scene of Alec being on fire, and you can definitely see the difference here on the 4K, where the smoke is engulfing the area, making it much darker. Whereas on the Blu-ray, it was really blown out, and you just didn't get that harsh smokiness from the fire. And this is a huge reference point to anyone that says 4K doesn't matter, it's the same as Blu-ray. Skin tones are also warmer on the 4K and looking more natural, while on the Blu-ray it leaned towards slightly palish skin tones. Earthy tones with browns also looks phenomenally better. Saturation is also increased, breathing more life and vigor into the image from start to finish. And I didn't notice the saturation being overly used or too harsh. Contrast is right on point, brightening up the image slightly more. That makes a huge improvement. The entire image from start to finish has a lot of life and pop to it and penetrates deep into the screen. Now the Blu-ray was littered with crushing in the black levels, engulfing details, and I even noticed some slightly grayish blacks. This 4K has fixed all this, going back to the black levels that look solid, deeper with inky blacks, and also rich shadows that penetrate deep into the screen, drawing out much more information than I've ever seen it before, revealing more details and even more colors, even in the darkest corners. Also, white levels were not very good on the Blu-ray. There were some really blown out spots, a lot of blooming issues throughout. This has all been corrected with the 4K. We now have brighter, crisper, more natural looking whites. And I didn't find any blooming issues or hotspots or blownouts anywhere on the image. Now, a huge reference point here that really dominates over the Blu-ray is with the abundance of details and textures that all looks razor sharp without any artificially sharpening done. The higher resolution, though, I will say, does reveal all the latex and rubbery costumes. That looks much more noticeable now, and close-ups of Swamp Thing's hand and his legs and feet definitely look like gloves were being worn, and he's definitely wearing a rubber suit. Close-ups on Swamp Thing reveals all the vines, slime, and moss that covers him, but also distinctive eyes and facial features that look fantastic. I mean, just look at the differences here between the close-up of Swamp Thing's eyes between the 4K and the Blu-ray. Outside of that, the swamp and exteriors are very active, down to the bog and the swamp, slime, even every branch and twig looks amazing with the amount of moss and leaves surrounding the area. Inside the lab is also very active. It's littered with papers, books, plants, TV screens. They're all clearly defined and visible, whereas on the Blu-ray they looked a little blurry. It's very impressive. The bit rate I saw range around 70 and peaking out around 100, and the filmic quality is kept in check here with the right amount of 35mm grain structure that is very consistent throughout. Unlike the Blu-ray where the grain swarmed a lot, had muddy areas, here we have a perfectly maintained filmic appearance that just looks beautiful. Guys, Swamp Thing on 4K UHD is a major 9-day difference when you compare it to the previous Blu-ray. MVD hit this one out of the park. This is how you would expect an almost 41-year-old film to look in 4K. All right, now let's get into the audio presentation of Swamp Thing, and it does include a DTS stereo track, and it's presented in its original mono design. And ambient effects, like the random noises of the surrounding wildlife, are discreet in the background, providing the soundstage with a really nice sense of presence here that feels wide and welcoming. And there's a lot of dynamic range that is clear and well balanced, exhibiting great clarity between the action scenes and the non-action scenes. Now, low bass, I will say, never reaches very deep. In fact, it seems rather weak, except for a couple moments with the score. Overall, it's a great sounding lossless stereo mix that does get the job done. Dialogue is clear and precise and locked in the center, and music nor sound effects ever drown out any part of the audio. Alright, so my overall score for MVD's 4K UHD presentation of Swamp Thing, I'm giving it a resounding 5 out of 5 for video and audio. If you're a fan of Wes Craven or a fan of the film, you definitely need this in your collection. It's a beautiful 4K UHD presentation. And I'm really curious here because this is the true test. When you look at the differences here between the 4K UHD and the Blu-ray formats, which do you think looks better? Head over to the comment section and let me know. And as always, thanks so much for hanging out a few minutes here with me and talking about Swamp Thing and compare it to the previous Blu-ray. As always, keep physical media alive, and we'll see you next time.